am a white American, raised in the United States. I have a white frame of reference and a white worldview, and I move through the world with a white experience. My experience is not a universal human experience. It is a particularly white experience in a society in which race matters profoundly, a society that is deeply separate and unequal by race. However, like most white people raised in the U.S., I was not taught to see myself in racial terms, and certainly not to draw attention to my race or to behave as if it mattered in any way. Of course, I was made aware that somebody's race mattered, and if race was discussed, it would be theirs, not mine. Yet a critical component of cross-racial skill building is the ability to sit with the discomfort of being seen racially, of having to proceed as if our race matters, which it does. Being seen racially is a common trigger of white fragility, and thus, to build our stamina, white people must face the first challenge: naming our race. Our opinions are uninformed. I have never met a white person without an opinion on racism. It's not really possible to grow up in the United States or spend any significant time here, or any other culture with a history of Western colonization, without developing opinions on racism. And white people's opinions on racism tend to be strong. Yet race relations are profoundly complex. We must be willing to consider that unless we have devoted intentional and ongoing study, our opinions are necessarily uninformed, even ignorant. How can I say that if you are white, your opinions on racism are most likely ignorant, when I don't even know you? I can say so because nothing in mainstream U.S. culture gives us the information we need to have the nuanced understanding of arguably the most complex and enduring social dynamic of the last several hundred years. For example, I can be seen as qualified to lead a major or minor organization in this country with no understanding whatsoever of the perspectives or experiences of people of color, few, if any, relationships with people of color, and virtually no ability to engage critically with the topic of race. I can get through graduate school without ever discussing racism. I can graduate from law school without ever discussing racism. I can get through a teacher education program without ever discussing racism. If I am in a program considered progressive, I might have a single required diversity course. A handful of faculty will have fought for years to get me this course, likely having had to overcome resistance from the majority of their white colleagues, and will still be fighting to keep the course. In this diversity course, we might read ethnic authors and learn about heroes and heroines from various groups of color. But there's no guarantee we'll discuss racism. In fact, when we try to talk openly and honestly about race, white fragility quickly emerges as we are so often met with silence, defensiveness, argumentation, certitude, and other forms of pushback. These are not natural responses. They are social forces that prevent us from attaining the racial knowledge we need to engage more productively. And they function powerfully to hold the racial hierarchy in place. These forces include the ideologies of individualism and meritocracy, narrow and repetitive media representations of people of color, segregation in schools and neighborhoods, depictions of whiteness as the human ideal, truncated history, jokes and warnings, taboos on openly talking about race, and white solidarity. Interrupting the forces of racism is ongoing, lifelong work because the forces conditioning us into racist frameworks are always at play. Our learning will never be finished. Yet our simplistic definition of racism as intentional acts of racial discrimination committed by immoral individuals engenders a confidence that we are not part of the problem, and that our learning is thus complete.